1, 2, 3.
Good morning. The Unitarian Church of Montpelier is located on Western Abenaki land, which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous people. The Unitarian Church of Montpelier honors, recognizes, and respects these peoples as the traditional and ongoing stewards of the lands and waters on which we gather. In that same spirit, we will respect, protect it, and be good stewards of this land for as long as we dwell upon it. I'm Charlotte Root, a member of the UCM board. I'm joining you from the Winooski River in Waterbury, Vermont. Thank you for joining us today on this Halloween, in the time when the veil between the worlds is thinnest. Happy Halloween to you. Whether you're on Zoom, on Facebook, or watching the service on your own time, we deeply appreciate your presence and fellowship. The Unitarian Church of Montpelier is a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1864. We are a religious community that welcomes all as we journey together seeking spiritual wholeness and justice in this world that we live in. Whether you are a newcomer, a longtime member, or somewhere in between, you are part of our community and we are glad that you're here. We especially extend a welcome to the Derby Line congregation and anyone who's joining us outside of our normal community today. You're very welcome. If you're joining us in Zoom, the chat function will be on for much of the service. It's a great way to publicly welcome and support each other, to affirm the hard work and effort of our worship team, who are so amazing, and to share good vibes and positive thoughts. For technical issues or constructive thoughts, please private message our fabulous Zoom hosts, Will White and Vertus Robinson. For added accessibility on Zoom, click on the live transcript button wherever it appears on your screen. For this morning's service, you will notice that we will not be in the sanctuary. This is to give our amazing production team volunteers and staff a well-deserved break, along with Reverend Joan, Donia Prince, and Eliza Thomas. Again, a warm welcome to each and every one of you who are joining us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Liza, Earle-Centers. I am your Director of Lifespan Spiritual Exploration. I use she, her pronouns. And a few brief announcements this morning are: order your holiday fair wreaths by this Saturday, November 5th. We can find all kinds of details about the festive and fun holiday fair adaptation for this year in the weekly e-news. And also, during her recent sabbatical, Reverend Joan invited all of us to read 4 books from her reading list. And on November 13th and 16th, she will host an online discussion of 2 of those books. They are Rooted, Life at the Crossroads of Science, Nature, and Spirit. And the other is All We Can Save, Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis. All are welcome, even if you haven't read the books. You can RSVP via the e-newsletter, which is also where you can find more about the many upcoming events and ways to connect with our church community. And now I invite you to enter more deeply into our time of worship together with our prelude.
Thank you, Eliza. Good morning. My name is Margot Prendergast. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your worship associate for today. Our opening words for this morning is a poem called The Paradox of Ancestry by Chris Rothbauer. We gather together this morning because others came before us. Some have left examples for us to follow, others lessons for us to learn from. And the paradox is that many have left both pain and joy. We honor our ancestors this morning, not because they are perfect, but because without them, we would not be here together, sharing our joy, our pain, our living and our dying. And now we will hear a recording of the hymn, Come, Come, Wherever You Are, sung by Meredith Warner and her daughter Esme. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and sing with harmonies or rounds too, just like we do when we're in the sanctuary together.
Good morning. We are Ellie and Dave Peters, and we're now going to have our chalice lighting and congregational covenant.
Let us now light the chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith.
We invite you to light a candle or chalice at home if you have one nearby.
We light this flame, enduring symbol of our collective commitment to lead with truth and compassion.
You got one. Please join us now in saying our congregational covenant.
We covenant to speak honestly and listen deeply to each other and the voice within.
Treat each other with compassion and honor our differences.
Take responsibility for the impact of our words, actions, and inactions have on each other.
Support each other in times of need and of grief, and celebrate the beauty and joy in our lives.
Honor the gifts of the past and be gentle with each other as we grow.
Encourage each other in the brave work of creating a more beloved community and a healthy, sustainable world.
And forgive each other and
And
start again.
Our generosity is a form of love and gratitude. Our gifts freely given help us to practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation. Each month, through the UCM Community Pouch Program, we share part of our collection with an important church fund or a community organization aligned with our values. During the month of October, our community pouch recipient is Abenaki Helping Abenaki, AHA. Your contribution to the community pouch this month will directly support this work. You can make a financial contribution today by donating online. Go to ucmvt.org and click Donate to UCM. There are options to contribute to the general fund, which supports the general operating budget of the church, the community pouch, or both. You can also mail a check to the church, or you can use our text to give option. Simply send a text with the word give to 802-266-4848 and follow the instructions sent to you. This information on how to donate will also be posted in the chat box. We are so grateful to each and every one of you for your generosity in its many forms.
Our musical offering this morning is by talented local songwriter Heidi Wilson. And Heidi says, "This song came to me a bunch of years ago when a friend invited me to consider the possibility that time is not linear. What if we had access to all of time at any moment?" That stopped me in my tracks and softened something in me. When I said yes to leading this worship service a few weeks ago, I thought immediately of inviting Heidi to sing this song that, when I heard it for the first time, captured the magic of being able to transport ourselves throughout time. And so our acting music director, Danya Prince, tracked Heidi down as she was on a road trip. And Heidi filmed this song for us inside a space at the Walker Art Museum in Minneapolis. So many thanks to Heidi Wilson and her travel and singing companions, Sarina Partridge and Willy Clemetson. The words to the song are simple, so I hope you might sing along with them. They are, here in the all-time, ancient, future, freshling, all-time. Feel free to rise in body or spirit and sing along as you are moved. Add some harmonies as they eventually do, or just let it wash over and transport you.
In the old time, ancient, future, freshling, all time. Here in the old time, ancient, future, freshling, all time. Here ancient, future, freshling, all time, here in the all time. Ancient, future, freshling, all time, here in the all time. Ancient, future, freshling, all time, here in the all time. Ancient, future, freshling, all time, here in the all time. Ancient, future, freshling, all time, here in the all time. Ancient, future, freshling, all time, here in the all time. Ancient, future, freshling, all time.
Thank you, Heidi and friends. That song always transports me. We set aside time now to share in the chat those joys and concerns that we bring with us into this time of worship. You may be celebrating something special in your life that you would like to share with all of us so we can celebrate with you. Or perhaps you are experiencing an extra challenge or loss that you'd like to share so that we may offer our love and support to you. You may enter them in the chat. I will not be reading any aloud today, but we will hold them in our hearts. I will also mention that Susan Baker is our lay pastoral care volunteer today. Susan is available this morning to lend a listening ear of care should any of you crave that. She will be available during our virtual coffee hour after the service, and she will also put her phone number in the chat in case anyone would like an after service conversation with her. Thank you for offering that, Susan. As I see the joys pouring in along with the sorrows, it makes me think of the timelessness of the practice of prayer, for strength and faith through challenging times. I believe that for much of human history around the world, there have always been people who pray, maybe to the Creator, Mother Earth, gods or goddesses, or perhaps to no precise divine source. Whether it be a prayer of gratitude or just seeking help from somewhere, somehow, in the silence of one's own heart. And as these concerns and joys still come trickling in, Meredith and I invite you to participate with us in an embodied form of prayer, as we sometimes do in worship when we're all together in the sanctuary or on Zoom.
And body prayer is a combination of words and motions that, with repetition, help us really get the prayer into our bones so that the feeling of it lingers during the coming days. You can do this from either standing like Liza is now, or seated like I am and will remain. I'll say the words for you now, and we can also put them in the chat as well, but they're really, really simple. And we're going to repeat this a couple of times. And it's, here in the all time, may we find strength in the past, present, and future. So if you would repeat that after me, here in the all time,
Here in the all time,
may we find strength
may we find strength
in the past,
in the past,
present,
present,
and future.
and future.
Great. Now Liza will help us out as we add some hand motions to this. And while you're doing this, make sure that you are breathing, that you are grounded, your 2 feet planted on the ground, feeling the connection between you and what's underneath you and around you as we do this. But the hand motions that we will do with this body prayer, and again, make sure that you're breathing, is here in the all time, may we find strength in the past, the present, and the future. Again, here in the all time, here in the all time, forgot that part. May we find strength in the past, present, and the future. So here in the all time, may we find strength in the past, present, and the future. All right, so we're going to do all of that together. And Liza, go ahead.
I think we're ready to try it out. We will do it 3 times with words and motions, and then 3 times in silence with just motions. We invite you to go into gallery view if you would like to see other people doing this collective body prayer. The body prayer will be followed by a time of silent meditation, after which we invite you to join in singing Spirit of Life. So here we go. It's great to see some of you are standing up.
And we also invite you, while we're doing this, to call on the strength of those who have come before us. Also those generations who come after us, whether related or not. And also the strength of those in the present who share with us daily. All right. So here in the all time, may we find strength in the past, present, and future. Everyone breathing? Here in the all time, may we find strength in the past, present, and the future. Here in the all time, May we find strength in the past, present, and future. We're going to slow it down a little bit. Here in the all time, may we find strength in the past, present, and future.
Our reading this morning is by Linda Hogan, a poet and novelist and member of the Chickasaw Nation. Walking, I can almost hear the redwoods beating, and the oceans are above me here, rolling clouds heavy and dark. It is winter, and there is smoke from the fires. It is a world of elemental attention, of all things working together, listening to what speaks in the blood. Suddenly, all of my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands. We find ourselves this week halfway between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. a magic and liminal space. Our gardens and fields show signs of the first killing frosts, and the winged ones are flying south. This is a sacred point in many different traditions, as Charlotte mentioned, when some say the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead is thinner, when we might perceive the presence of those who have died. In our household, we set up photos of some of our ancestors. You can see our setup in the back of my screen here. I invite you, as we do, to define ancestor broadly as anyone, related or not, who came before us and whose life somehow is connected meaningfully to ours, even if just in the form of inspiration. Next to the photographs, we've added harvest elements, and we share stories to remind us, as Linda Hogan said, that we are the result of the love of thousands. This practice, which I know some of you do as well, makes us feel closer to the ancestors, despite the span of time that separates us. This month's worship theme is cultivating relationships, and it certainly has been helpful for me to cultivate relationships with the ancestors during this pandemic time. Here in the all time, ancient future, freshling all time. When I sing that during this service, I invite you to sing along with me, and we can just imagine how the quiet echo would sound in our ancient sanctuary. As I said, I've been thinking about the ancestors a lot through the pandemic, because instead of trying to make sourdough bread as my new pandemic learning, I decided to try out time travel. Yes. You see, a few months before the pandemic hit, I'd spent a weekend with my parents in the house my father grew up in Derby Line, Vermont. That old house holds many treasures. In the living room that day, there was an old wooden box, and among its many contents was this stack of letters. There are nearly 50 letters and postcards written by my grandfather, Edwin Earle, in the summer of 1921. He would have been 16 years old, and it appeared that he wrote to his mother and older sister, Ruth, at their home back in Somerville, Massachusetts, nearly every day. Even though he grew up in the Boston area, Derby Line was where his mother's family lived. And in that box, I also found his dedication certificate from the Universalist Church there, where he was an active member for most of his adult life. And thus we welcome those from Derby Line congregation with us this morning. From scanning the first few letters, I learned that my grandfather spent that summer working as an elevator boy at the Mount Kineo House, a grand hotel on Moosehead Lake in the wilderness of northern Maine. What a special gift this seemed. It even, as you see, came with a ribbon. You see, I adored my grandfather. I didn't get enough time to know him fully. He died in 1989. Here is a picture of little me and my older brother with my grandfather. As you can see, when I was born, he was already a seasoned soul of 75 years old. He died in 1989 when I was 10 years old, and since then I have missed him deeply. And the smell of his homemade Anadama bread in the oven, the sparkle in his eyes when we played checkers, or the feel of his tight, loving squeeze of my hand when I sat next to him in his armchair. Here, with these letters was an unexpected chance to know him better. But with me having transformed into middle age and him suddenly being a teenager. Here in the all-time, ancient future, freshling all time. So this stack of letters became my time machine. After all, if ever there was a good time to escape from, it seemed this COVID time was it. So I brought the stack of letters home, and on the occasional quiet evening, I typed the next one in the stack. You can see what one looks like right here. I'll share a few highlights with you now. From July 4th, 1921, he writes to his mother. The elevator is run by water power. He was the elevator boy. And it is about as poor a specimen of engineering as I have ever seen. When it goes with jerks and jumps. It does not stop when you move the lever, but slides 3 or 4 feet further on. When you stop at a floor, it creeps up or down. Usually, when people get on, it falls about a foot or foot and a half so that somebody either trips or stumbles or hits their head. And they all blame me, except those who have lived with the elevator before. There are men working on it about all the time, but by the time they fix something, something else goes wrong. But he found his peaceful moments, as you'll see, often after a shift, hiking up Mount Kineo, maybe around midnight. This one is from September 1st. It was one of the most beautiful nights I have ever seen. There was no moon until about 10:30, but there were northern lights and the whole north was a greenish white. In the south, there was a very distant thunderstorm, and the red reflection of the lightning in the sky and on the water was in contrast with the northern lights. Up above, there were lots of shooting stars, and I saw one big one go clear across the sky. Then the moon rose red, and with the lake spread off in front, it made a picture, the like of which you don't find very often. We woke up at about 4 o'clock and watched the sunrise. I will not try to tell you about that because I can't. No one can know what that is like until they see it. As you can see, the letters are riveting and a special window into another time. But sadly, I always found the time machine didn't let me escape my own reality for all that long. I'd snap back into my daily pandemic struggles of getting me and the kids off our screens and out into the sunshine. I'm sure the parents out there can relate. Or navigating what type of socializing might feel safe, with whom, under what protocols. But a remarkable thing started to happen. You see, having these weekly visits of sorts made me sense my grandpa's comforting presence around me at a time when I, like so many of us, was feeling lonely, adrift, anxious, and overwhelmed. I wondered, what wisdom might he offer for these times? And I started to see with my heart. For example, lesson number 1, when I would be at my wit's end with the new technology of our times, say hosting a Zoom program for church on days when my Wi-Fi was shaky, raise your hand if you can relate to that frustration. I would think of him trying to wrestle the steam-powered elevator for the guests. And I would take a breath, try to find the humor, and persevere. Here are some of the other lessons that I am trying to apply, and I invite you to see if they are helpful for you. Lesson number 2, stay in touch with those you love and tell them you love them. Midsummer, young Edwin writes to his mother and sister, I feel as if I was neglecting you when I miss a day in writing. But most of the boys think they are doing well if they write every week or two. And one boy has not written but one letter since he came here, and that's all he intends to write. And here is his typical closing of a letter. With lots and lots of love and hugs, as always, and lots more, Edwin. Have any of you reached out more to some loved ones during this time? Or maybe said, I love you more often? If so, my grandpa would approve. And if not, he would invite you to do so. Lesson number 3, practice generosity. His pay was $20 a month plus tips, which weren't much, and room and board. On August 15th, he sent $25 home. He asks his mother to put $20 in the bank and to save $5 for themselves, saying, I want you to use it for some good time for you and Ruth. I looked up, and $5 then is the equivalent about $70 today. An entire week's worth of his pay as a teenager to lift the spirits of his mother and sister. This has made me start to dig more deeply when I am giving gifts or donations or reparations. Lesson number 4, don't make quick judgments. Young Edwin quickly judged some of the other staff. Much to my embarrassment, he wrote one letter early on describing them as cheap trash, the women who waited on the staff meals. But just a couple weeks later, he admits to his mother that he was rash, and he comes to admire them. People who have found this type of work as a way to see places all over the country and even the world. Lesson number 5 might resonate with many of you. Nature is medicine for the blues. He writes about another young man on staff who was his friend. Jack got the homesick blues. He said he felt almost like crying. He wanted to go home a few days so badly. I had been feeling just the same and had taken my cure by a 6-mile walk in the woods. I went way up to the north end of Kineo Island. It was a beautiful walk through wild woods. I'm going around there to camp some night soon. Farm Island is only about 1/3 of a mile from the point, and I'm going to make a raft sometime and go over there. How many of us have found we feel better after moving out in nature during these challenging times? I know many of you have gotten in that habit. He also mentioned lesson number 6, make plans that inspire you. Did you notice it? He set a goal to make a raft and get over to another island. I have found it essential for my mental health right now to have things that I'm looking forward to. Sometimes it's as simple as a book that's on hold at the library or a walk with a friend. But in the middle of last winter, my husband Lincoln and I made a commitment to visit Mount Kineo, which we did this past summer. Just having something on the calendar to look forward to felt like a lifeline. Does this work for any of you? Seeing some heads nod. It also felt like that spirit of my grandpa was urging us to go. You see, we're not totally sure if Grandpa ever made it back there. Many years later, just a few months after his 4th child was born, a surgery to remove a benign brain tumor severed most of his optic nerve. He could still see peripherally, but was considered legally blind. He was right around the age I am now. My father can't recall ever hearing Grandpa talk about this summer at Mount Kineo. A family vacation there was unthinkable. But I felt drawn to go there in my bones, like the blood in me that is Grandpa's wanted to be there again, to travel with us. I wonder if it is anything like the sensation of the monarch butterflies traveling toward Mexico this time of year, even though they've never been shown the way. It would be exactly 100 years since Grandpa was there, and that added a bit of a pilgrimage feel to it. We had read online that the hotel was no more, but we knew the lake was still there, and the mountain where my grandfather had slept so many nights. So Lincoln and our 9-year-old daughter Marissa and I put our camping gear in the van, the canoe on top, and drove to Moosehead Lake in late July. We spent 3 nights on Kineo Island. We arrived chilled after paddling 2 miles to a primitive camping site on what the map showed, named appropriately Hard Scrabble Point. The wind nearly blew us over and our gear was dampened, but not our spirits. We sought out sheltered spot for the tent, looked around for birch bark off some logs, and made a huge fire and a warm feast. The next day, the weather was better. We spent the day paddling around the island, awed by the 1,000-foot high cliff face of Mount Kineo. And Grandpa was right when he wrote that the postcards and pictures just don't come close to the real thing. That evening, that second evening, I felt an urgent tug as I sat at our picnic table, as if Grandpa was pulling my hand to come with him and watch the sunset from the top of the mountain. So Marissa and Lincoln stayed at camp while I explored the North Trail, which originated right from our campsite. I had to jog much of the way if I were to make it up by sunset. This pace was easy for my guide, the ghost of my teenage grandpa, but I was huffing and puffing as I scrambled the steep pitches, seeing the sun getting lower and lower in the west. Finally, the fire tower was right in front of me. I raced up several flights of stairs and wow, with my heart bursting for multiple reasons, I took in such a sight. The golden light of the sun blessed me for about 5 more minutes before dipping below the hills. And in the east, the nearly full moon had risen. There was a 360-degree view of the lake, 40 miles long, with the hills beyond and the sky above. I couldn't notice much of anything in that view that would have changed from when Grandpa was there 100 years earlier. Here in the all-time, ancient future, freshling all time. After a few minutes, I snapped a panoramic photograph, gave thanks to Grandpa for guiding me and my family to this most majestic place. It was the highlight of my entire year, and we want to return next year with my dad and his 3 sisters and any other relatives who want to join us. Just sharing these letters with my relatives has helped us stay connected in these times of not seeing each other. Some of them are in worship right now. I welcome you. It was my Aunt Lydia who mentioned that somewhere in the Derby Line house, she had seen a picture of Grandpa in his elevator boy uniform. And one weekend this fall, after some collective digging, they found it. What a special treat to see this picture, especially after he had mentioned how proud he was on that day of how clean and spiffy he got. It wasn't till this past week in preparation for this worship service that I typed up the last of the remaining letters. I didn't want the visit with my grandpa to end, but now I feel him close always, even echoed back from the future when I get a firm, loving hand squeeze from my daughter. Now, many Indigenous cultures feel the presence of the ancestors, not just at this particular time of year. Last year, Melody Walker Brook of the Elnu Band of the Abnaki was a guest in our children's chapel, and she told us, "We have no death in our worlds, and when we talk about our ancestors, they're all around us, always. Even if we can't see them, they guide us, like fireflies along a summer path. They're always there, watching and helping us along the way." Well, if ever there was a time we needed watching and help along the way, isn't it now? I invite us, all of us, to use today and this coming week to invite the ancestors to us, and then maybe keep them with us daily to help guide us. I wonder what lessons the lives of your ancestors from your biological family or your chosen family might offer you right now. I invite you to take a moment and think about that now and in the coming days. If you wish, you could share it in the chat or not, or just speak their name aloud, perhaps. Here in the all time, ancient future, freshling all time. I invite you now to join in our closing hymn, We Are, by Dr. Ysaye Barnwell, performed here by the General Assembly Virtual Choir of 2020, including 3 of our own beloveds, Sue Stuckey, Steve Finner, and Lee Kinvey. Many thanks to all of you who answered our invitation to share photos of your ancestors, which our ministerial intern, Bertus LeVar Robinson, has skillfully edited into the video.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of ancestors, we are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage.
Thank you. Wow. Beautiful ancestors. As we draw our service to a close, we extinguish this chalice and carry within each of us its healing flame, the warmth of community, and the spark of hope into the days and the week ahead. Now, please join me in saying our congregational mission statement. We welcome all as we build a loving community to nurture each person's spiritual journey, serve human need, and protect the earth, our home. These words of benediction are adapted from ones by my colleague, Robin Slaw. As we go forward into the rest of this day and the week ahead, may we allow the memory of loved ones to guide us, to comfort us in times of trouble, to bring us joy in remembering. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. We square our shoulders for those who follow. We hold up the painful parts of our past, remembering the times people were marginalized, promising to do better when we know better. We dedicate ourselves to hold the history of what came before, what will follow as history yet to be created, and to shine our light brightly in the world. We now conclude our service with the postlude, thanks to Eliza Thomas on piano and to Reverend Joan, who made this collage of photos of our Unitarian Universalist ancestors for a service last year, along with some more recent prophetic voices in the work of social justice.